When a fall occurs, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Falls are not only a physical crisis, an emergency for a family, but they often lead to a financial one as well.
A lot of our healthcare system is not really set up for the preventions. Let's prevent that fall.
Welcome to the Empowered Elder Podcast. When people think about a fall, they often think of them as accidents, something unfortunate but temporary. But the reality is much bigger than that. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 adults aged 65 and older falls each year, and the falls are leading cause of both fatal and non-fatal injuries among older adults. And beyond the physical impact, there's a ripple effect that many families aren't prepared for, including long-term care needs, loss of independence, and unexpected financial strain.
In fact, research shows that the average cost of a fall injury requiring hospitalization can exceed $30,000. And that doesn't include the ongoing costs of rehabilitation, caregiving, or changes in living situations. But here's the hopeful part. Many falls are preventable, and many of the financial consequences can be planned for. With the right strategies, support, and conversations, families can move from reactive to proactive and protect both quality of life and financial stability.
Because a fall isn't just a medical event, it's often a turning point. One that can change how someone lives, moves, and makes decisions moving forward.
Today, we're bringing together 2 experts who see this moment different but deeply connected perspectives.
Annie Garland is a certified financial planner with Wealth Clarity, helping individuals and families navigate retirement, caregiving, and the financial realities that come with aging.
And Larissa Ellis is a doctor of physical therapy with nearly 2 decades of experience helping people stay active, independent, and safe, including leading fall prevention programs in assisted living communities.
We're your hosts, Nicole Rabilato and Tasha Beckman, and this is the Empowered Elder Podcast, where we talk about home, heart, and the next chapter of life. So let's get started.
This is super exciting to have both of you together on one interview.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Can you tell us what got you started and what you're doing today?
You want to go first, Liv?
Yeah, so I've been a physical therapist for going on 18 years, and I got into physical therapy because my mom was, and I always went to work with her when I was little, and knew that it was something that really spoke to me, and still doing it today, and just really like helping people stay active and achieve their goals and stay healthy.
Awesome.
And I transitioned into financial planning in 2020 from a 20-year career as a personal trainer. And so there's a lot of similarities. That's how Larissa and I met, actually, as she was my PT, but once I saw her skill set, started to refer many of my personal training clients to Larissa for things that were out of my scope, essentially.
That's a neat way to kind of connect. So what was the moment where you realized, not only from a standpoint of taking the financial piece and the physical piece and marrying those two together so that you can kind of bounce things off for your clients?
Referring to her in this space in financial planning is no different for me than it was. It's not any more challenging to find the need for Larissa in this space for clients or for clients' parents as it was when I was actually doing the physical work as their personal trainer. Because, as we talked about why we're here, is that falls are not only a physical crisis, an emergency for a family, but they often lead to a financial one as well. So they certainly go hand in hand.
That's true.
Yeah. And I think, just the nature of physical therapy and kind of the type of clinic I'm lucky enough to work at, we get a lot of one-on-one time with patients, and you really get to know them and kind of learn kind of what they need, both from a physical standpoint, but just outside of that as well. And so I have a lot of patients where I'm like, oh, you could probably talk to Annie and kind of get healthier in that regard as well. Just making sure that you're set up to be moving forward in the future financially too.
Probably never thought when they came to their physical therapy session that you would be saying, so have you talked about your finances with someone?
Totally. But, it's kind of like a hairdresser in a lot of ways. Like you get really close to your patients and they open up a lot, and you really build that level of trust. And obviously I've built that level of trust with Annie as well. So I feel really good about, sharing people with her in her specialty as well.
It's always a great partnership when you truly understand the other's viewpoint and skill set and how your services can blend, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's important, in your industry to have a network that goes beyond the traditional, not necessarily like referral base, but that goes out of the scope of what our clients are expecting of us. And also just being more observant of their needs that go beyond, we can't just say, I hope that you get this taken care of. If we can actually get them in front of somebody that can assist them with that, or then get them in front of somebody who can. I mean, we're going above and beyond for our clients, and that influences the service that we can provide or that we are providing. But it's actually really easy. It doesn't have to be something that's difficult when you find the right people, I think.
What I love about it too is because when you're meeting with your clients, like you had mentioned, Larissa, you're getting to know them, right? And it's like the hairdresser where they're hearing a lot of things. But even from a financial advisor perspective, so you're not just talking about the finances, but you're getting to know them beyond that. And like they would tell you that they had a fall, somebody in their family had a fall. So you're getting to know them and knowing them a little bit more deeply so that you can serve them a little bit better, right?
Absolutely. And we're hearing from younger clients like Larissa, our age, we're in our 40s. And so we're raising kids, but we're concerned about our parents. And so the clients that I see that are closer to my age, that's coming up in my conversations with clients and that affects their financial life. Is maybe it's a concern, are they going to have to step in financially and help support an aging parent, or not only financially, but with their time when they already feel stretched pretty thin. And they have questions about their parents' financial picture. They don't know because they're uncomfortable asking those questions. The parents haven't been forthcoming with it. There isn't a plan. Nobody's, you have all these concerns. And so you talk about it with everybody but the people that can, help make it better or help create a plan and make some decisions in advance of a crisis happening.
And I think it's so common that, in both of our worlds that things happen when you don't have another option, right? Like I see people a lot after they've fallen. And unfortunately, I think a lot of our healthcare system is not really set up for the prevention of stuff. And like, hey, let's be proactive about this. Let's prevent that fall. Hey, let's be proactive about our, kind of having those conversations with our family members to kind of be set up for the financial side of things too. So there is a lot that can be done that I just don't think is what we do for some reason.
Larissa, what would you say are some things that if you're having conversations with family, like getting things prepared for before the fall happens? So what are some examples of how you would say to a family, like, let's do this, this, and this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of easy things to do. Like the first thing is, setting up your home situation, right? Like throw rugs are always like a big tripping hazard. Decluttering, little tiny dogs and cats that are, kind of crawling around all over the place. Those are big hazards. But then, I think staying active is something that is really, probably not something that sounds as appealing as we get older, but it's even more important as we get older. So staying active, staying connected socially. Like there's a lot of research that shows like, okay, like your lack of socialization leads to, more dementia. Dementia leads to more falls, right? So staying active physically and socially is huge. And there's, again, kind of like on the proactive side of it, a lot of people that are on, say, Medicare-based insurance plans, you can go to physical therapy for balance. And a lot of times I'll have patients come in and be like, hey, I have terrible balance. I want to get better. We can get them on a plan for a home program and get them connected. And that could be really empowering. And then it's also kind of hitting that socializing component as well, which is huge.
So what could you tell to a family member or to the elder about preventative kind of maintenance, right? We go to the dentist on a regular basis, but we don't think about coming to PT for balance treatment on a regular basis. So would there be a recommendation that you could give on what kind of cadence of that maintenance schedule to be on?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it kind of depends on the person, and insurance can be a limiting factor, right? So copays are going up, access to physical therapy is going down. So like there are those types of barriers to their access, but I would say like a lot of times we get patients to a place where they're like, okay, I feel pretty stable with my program. And they're like, can I come in and just check in every 4 to 6 months and just kind of have updates and stuff like that. So I think like an annual check-in at the very least would be really powerful. And then once you feel like you're really solid on your program, then checking in less frequently would be fine.
I guess it's the same from a financial planning standpoint. What are you doing to speak to your clients and try to get them be proactive? So what are some steps and conversations that you might be having?
Yeah, one thing to speak to of your question though with Larissa is that I've been shocked that we don't treat physical therapy more as a proactive approach. We don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of those conversations with clients saying, we treat ourselves. Some people treat themselves to a massage, but they don't, and they exercise and they put in, if you have people taking really good care of themselves, it's really not common to see a physical therapist unless you're treating an issue, I think anyway. But I wish that we did more of that. From a financial planning perspective, when my clients have the means, I will, or even if we're doing forward-looking projections, we will always increase their expenses for things like this. Healthcare, as we know healthcare, and so people account for, I think, healthcare as a whole, but what does that actually look like? And it can look like, for those that are seeking longevity, they're in great condition as it is, or they're trying to really take a more proactive, preventative approach, this should be part of their plan. And it could be that you see a PT like Larissa who writes you a program that you follow at home. It doesn't have to be that you're going in twice a week indefinitely, but it costs money, as it should, especially to see someone who's skilled and can cover more and has the experience to work with that population. But that's, from our perspective, we have to bake that into the financial plans. And we also have to let people know that they can afford it and they should, and it pays off. It often pays off because we'd rather be paying for it to, take care of ourselves versus the costs are going to be, quite a bit more if you're doing it on the other end, either after a fall or because you're then caring for someone who needs more assistance for everyday living.
Yeah, unfortunately, our insurance structure isn't to help with preventative maintenance.
Oh,
They would much rather come in after the fact, and it's so counterintuitive.
it is.
And they limit what you can get. I love how you said that you're planning for those components early on. So you hear planning for maybe moving into a community, those are the things that you hear people are planning for, but you don't hear planning for the self-care or making sure that you have money set aside to help with those situations. I think that's key.
Absolutely. It is. It's huge. And it gives people peace of mind that they can do these things, for decades if they need to, that they can do them. And it should be part of their aging plan.
And I think a big part of the problem is also kind of just physical therapists are not great at marketing themselves. So chiropractors, massage therapists, people are like, oh, yes, I'm going to spend that money. And I think us as a profession as a whole need to do better at that. We have doctoring degrees. We have a lot of school. We have a lot of experience. We have a lot of very in-depth knowledge that we'd love to share. We need to do better at kind of making that part of what Annie was saying, part of the plan.
Because you think of those things as a luxury, right? So a massage, a chiropractic appointment, physical therapy, those are, things that are preventative in your physical therapy. Think luxury. So you're not, that goes to the back burner. When what I'm hearing is you're saying put that in the forefront and have that as part of your planning and be a part of your overall well-being. Right?
Absolutely. When I was a personal trainer, I was hired many times by adult children who were generous and had the financial means to hire me to come in and see their aging mom or their dad. And I did a lot of kind of worked hand in hand with the recommendations of a physical therapist to do balance training, to do flexibility, to go into the home and ensure that there weren't these hazards that were being overlooked simply because people just weren't aware that, they should be, modified. But it was a huge, and for one, the socialization piece that Larissa mentioned, I was often just a conversation, a person to have a 1 hour conversation with, and we're doing, the exercise was going on, and the strength training and balance, but I was also a social hour, which was equally as important, in their routine.
So, what are the easy kind of 2 or 3 things that a family can do, both from the financial perspective and the health perspective at home, to help identify when they need to come in and see you?
That's a good question. I would say anytime they're thinking, like the family's thinking like, ooh, I'm like that, the parent is looking a little bit more unsteady on their feet, or reporting any pain, because again, pain is going to be something that can often lead to a fall, and often lead to something that, becomes a bigger issue and a more expensive issue, both from a, potential, therapy or surgery, medical intervention in the future. So yeah, I would say like anytime you have any concerns about balance or strength, that's the time I would go. And I think, there's so much research out there right now that so much about our longevity and just overall health is being strong. So really, anytime you also think, oh man, they're not as strong as they were before, they're needing to use their hands to get out of a chair, or those types of things, like, okay, that's a real easy thing to work on and gets better quick, if you're being proactive about it.
I think from a financial planning perspective, estate planning documents, having those in place, having conversations with adult children or whoever is a caregiver or possibly in that role, and just having families be more proactive about the conversations, and ensuring that there's a plan. I mean, talking about these things aren't going to make them happen. Talking about them are going to make us all better prepared. And so people can step in when needed. And maybe that's creating a network in advance of, maybe it's, it could be that you are meeting the people that are going to be there for you if a fall occurs or if a health event occurs. I was telling Larissa, I've seen clients that a fall led to them being moved across the country to be near an adult child. I mean, it's catastrophic. It's life-changing. It can be. It doesn't have to be, though, but often it is when there isn't a plan in place and people have neglected it or felt uncomfortable. Or, even like I said, with the estate planning documents, getting them updated. If you may have them, but if they're 10, 20 years old, go back to that estate planning attorney, have a review, make sure everything's buttoned up, make sure all the names are still correct and that everything is still accurate, and that you have contact. As a financial planner, I like to have the contact information of the adult children and the beneficiaries, a trusted contact. Financial fraud is prevalent for all of us these days, and so we need to protect people from that perspective as well. The aging population is more prone to that. And so we need to make sure that we're, doing what we can.
And kind of, so would you say when a fall occurs, so from your professional perspective, is the first thing that comes to mind is getting that contact information, but what do you think of first when you hear that a family member comes to you and says, my mother fell? What's the first thing that comes to your mind from a professional perspective?
I like to know from the, I always hope, gosh, I hope you've had these conversations, because I know that can lead to sometimes the person doesn't go back into their home again. And depending on the severity of the fall. But I was telling Larissa another story that is a great example, I think, for your audience. Is I got a call a couple days before Christmas this year from a friend, and her parents, she lives out of state. Her parents live here in Colorado. The mom was the caretaker of the dad who has Alzheimer's, and the mom fell and broke her hip and needed surgery and needed to go to a rehab. And so she's calling and saying, we never had these conversations. We've been talking about it. How do I know how much my parents can afford for assisted living? Now's the time. My brother and I are going to take advantage of this opportunity. Not take advantage, but it's going to happen. And they had no idea because they hadn't gotten organized. And so the last thing you have a father who can't care for himself and is about 80 years old. The mother is now dealing with a very traumatic injury, she's the caretaker, and the adult children leave their lives and their jobs and their families unexpectedly to come care for the father, care for the mother, and they're out of their element. They don't even know the first person to call. And so I could only provide so much help, not knowing their information. They didn't have a financial advisor, and they hadn't researched the properties nearby that were going to be appropriate to care for their parents. So it's an example of what happens really all too common. And at a certain age, we need to understand that it's likely to happen. And I understand that, it might be too preemptive to do it for parents in their 60s or so, but I don't think it's too early to get these things out on the table and just get organized and just start, thinking about the what ifs.
Yeah, I think the what if planning is super important for health and finance.
Right.
Because just because you're healthy and happy and together today doesn't mean there's not going to be a crisis tomorrow, right? Car accidents happen no matter what your age is,
Yes.
right? There's health crisis that creeps up and you didn't expect it. It didn't run in your family or whatever. So this whole what if planning for health and finance is super important, just to do the plan A, plan B, plan G, plan M, whatever it is, like if it ever, and hopefully it won't, but when it does, then you at least have the framework for it, right?
And you're in control of your choices, right? So we want to be in control of our choices. So the more you said, even have it go down the line of those plans, don't just have a plan A and a plan B, because doing our own research just provides us more flexibility. Being financially secure provides you with more options and flexibility. So planning ahead for that is helpful. And the work that Larissa does with her patients helps push these things back, if not, hopefully and often indefinitely, that if that's not what is going to, we can not entirely avoid these things, but you can do a lot to prevent it.
Absolutely. And I think, Annie has mentioned again a lot, just like being open and having the conversations. And they're hard conversations. They're not easy, but we need to have them. And that's something that I've done a lot with my patients too, is kind of helping facilitate those conversations with families. So oftentimes it's an adult child bringing their older parent in for physical therapy. And I can oftentimes help kind of start these conversations that you can tell they don't want to have. Like they both have great intentions to have these conversations, but it's just not kind of, how they've operated. And so they're conversations that they both want to have, but don't know how to start. So I think, both people in my line of work and Annie's line of work, we love those conversations. And so we're happy to help facilitate those.
It's easy to have those conversations because I'm sure you have seen it too often where something changes in a split second and, hindsight's 20/20, right? So they're like, oh, we should have had a plan in place. So because you have seen that side of it, then you're able to frame your conversations with your clients and your patients to say, I've seen this happen. I have seen what could occur and the ripple effect that it has, right? So having that conversation with them ahead of time, it's not like you're just making it up. No, I've seen it. And I've had clients that have lived it, right? So
it's a safe space to do it, right? I think there's always a lot of emotional energy kind of in these stressful situations. I see it, with my parents. My dad has Parkinson's, and my mom's also a PT, and she knows what he needs to do to move better and move safer. But oftentimes maybe her delivery's not great because she's frustrated and she's scared. And so me being kind of like, I guess, kind of a third party, even though I'm pretty in it, like I'm able to kind of help facilitate those conversations in a safer place for everybody, where everybody's being heard, everybody's needs are being met, and modeling maybe different communication styles that are going to be a little bit more
Different
well-received.
delivery.
Yeah.
So for someone listening today, what would you say is the path to the communication to even start that?
It's a good question. Larissa and I have both experienced it ourselves with our siblings. And so I think it takes a family approach. And I say that because, as she said, with her father, my father also had Parkinson's. And so you have to, whoever's on the team, right? I mean, if we're talking about aging parents here, and some of these elders don't have adult children, but hopefully they have people in their lives that are on their team and there to support them, whether that's other family members or neighbors and close friends that are there. And so somebody needs to be the first person to have this conversation. And it's so much easier before there's actually a reason to bring it up. It's hard to bring it up when you're noticing something that somebody's very self-conscious about, that they are concerned about. And when you're bringing it up to someone who, maybe looks unsteady on their feet and there is concern, that's not the time to bring it up. It is, certainly do it if you haven't already done it, but it's so much easier to bring it up sooner and to get everybody on the same page and to just, go deep with these conversations. Like families are having these conversations. We're having them with our, I think we can find that we're sitting across the table from our clients and they're very open with us about it and with other people in their lives, but maybe still that's not a conversation they've had with the people that need to be in that conversation within the family. That's how we are here, right? We just we keep things private, or no one really knows how to approach kicking off the conversation.
Want to pretend like everything's okay. You see that even with like social media, and you see the picture that everybody paints, but there's always a story behind the scenes, right? And everybody's going through their own challenges, but it's not as easy to let that out and let people know that you're struggling. We're all struggling with something, right? But it's just easier to say, everything's fine. I didn't lose my balance. I just tripped over something, or something. That's really not what happened. But,
Yeah. And I think kind of like within like the family unit, when people do have, adult children or grandchildren, right? Like we all, in my family, like there's four of I'm one of four, and we all kind of have different things that we're able to kind of like talk to our parents about, like, okay, me and my sister are the medical people. My brothers can kind of, get to them in other ways. And so play to the strengths that you have. But then I think, again, having people like a physical therapist that you trust or a financial planner that you trust, like, I think Annie and I are different in that, we really don't treat our people like a number, right? Like we treat them like we would want our family to be treated. And so Annie has, a deep list of referrals should they need it, right? Same with me, right? Like if I'm not the person to help you, I'm like, hey, like, let me help you. So I think finding your other people that are willing to take it to another step is huge versus just kind of going to somebody that you're just another number. So,
and you said, you've got siblings, so like you said, you divide and conquer. But what about those families that don't have that somebody to fall on, to lean on and say, can you help with this area? I'll take this, you take that. So how do you kind of help navigate that when they don't have the options and to help them through the process?
I have a client who never had children of her own, and she's now a widow. And so she has close friends, but her friends are aging too, and her family's aging. So about 5 years ago, she hired a professional service who will step in the event that she needs care. She's completely independent. She's in great health, but those services exist, and she took a proactive approach long before it was needed, which I commend her for that. And I think one point for your listeners is that if they're listening to this conversation and they think it, it has value and it pertains to them. Hopefully, if they're listening and they ask themselves, do they feel confident in their plan right now? Do they feel like they have confidence in the plan that they have set up for the what ifs? If you can answer yes to that, then great, you're in a great place. If you can't confidently answer yes to that, then there's more that you could be doing.
When you talk about your multiple siblings and you each have your own skill sets, do you also then all come together to talk as a group for, here's what I see happening with mom or dad, and here's what your brother sees happening with mom or dad, and you balance the scales of the understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's taken a lot of work to get to
Sure.
that level of communication, and it's not always been very great, but
Or fun.
Yeah. But definitely something that's, we're constantly working on and, calling each other out on when the communication could be better. And then, just supporting each other. But it's been a journey, and it's going to continue to evolve as things get different, right? So
I think that's also true when there's not family members and you have that kind of trusted guides and advisors and people to lean on, and who's your safety net. Those folks also need to have some joint communication, right?
Absolutely, they do. And giving permission for those parties to talk to each other, to communicate with each other, to communicate with adult children is really valuable thing, so that we can kind of step in, I think. And if we've observed something, one thing to note with what Larissa's saying, I think with the adult children, I experienced this with my father passed away a few years ago. But my siblings, I have a brother and a sister, and we worked really well together when we needed to step in and help. It was a few years of his decline, but you see how your personalities shine through, for better or worse. And my brother's very even-keeled and very practical. My sister and I are the more emotional ones. It's an emotional thing. And so think about who are these people who are stepping in for you, and who's going to be very emotional over this if you do have a fall, if you have a health event, and who's going to be handling their emotions better and have divide and conquer what needs to be done, I think is really, really something important to identify.
And I know with my parents wanted to basically do everything possible to not put us out as their kids. And I think so many of people like me, adult kids, we want to help our parents. And so I think kind of changing that script is important. It's way easier to help when we have a plan and it's not a crisis situation. But your adult children's love you. You cared for them their entire life. We would love to be able to return the favor. Let's have a positive framework to make that happen.
What stands out in this conversation is that a fall is rarely just about the fall. It's about everything that follows, the decisions, the adjustments, and the realities families are facing, often navigating for the first time.
And what Annie and Larissa both highlighted is that these moments don't just affect the body. They affect independence, confidence, and the direction of someone's future.
In part 2, we're going to shift from reaction to preparation and talk about what families can do before a crisis happens.
We'll explore how to reduce risk, how to plan financially, and how to approach aging in a way that supports both strength and security.
If you've ever wondered how to better prepare for the unexpected, you won't want to miss this one.
Join us for part 2 of the conversation.